Hey friends, it's Lark. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up, and I read 5 books, which, considering the length of majority of these, I feel like is pretty impressive, especially since I've been kind of like building my reading stamina back up. I actually had a really great reading month as far as quality. Honestly, this entire year, I'm pretty sure like I haven't given anything under like a 3.5 star. So I'm not sure if that's just because I'm picking up just really fantastic books, or I'm just kind of getting to know my taste a little bit more and can tell if I'm going to like a book based on the synopsis or not. I also am very quick to put down books if I'm not feeling them. I did end up DNFing 1 book this month, but it wasn't even because it was bad. I just wasn't really feeling it right now, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. So the first book that I read in February was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and I think I started this in January, but I didn't finish it until February, so that's where we're gonna place it. And I've talked about this book a couple times on my channel. This is an Asian-inspired fantasy following basically the events of the Opium Wars, just kind of in a fictional retelling. And it is adult fantasy. It's very brutal, very dark, follows some very rough events, but it's so important and it's just a phenomenal story and it's so good. Even though the second half of the book, especially the second quarter of the book, was very difficult to read at times, I just still highly recommend this book and I cannot wait to start the sequel. And I obviously gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I don't really know what to say about this book that hasn't already been said. I feel like everyone has read this book at this point. But this story basically follows our girl Rin, and she is a war orphan and living with this family who are opium dealers, and she runs the shop. Can you not play with your paper ball right now? I apologize for any cat noises. I'm in the living room today. But she does not want to get stuck in an arranged marriage with this old gross guy, so she studies super hard for this very difficult test, and she gets top of her region and gets to go to the most prestige military school, Senegard or Seingard. I don't know. I didn't listen to the audiobook, so I don't know how to pronounce anything, but it's just so inspiring but also heart-wrenching, and it was very good. It was very good. The next one was actually a reread for me, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I read this book for the first time in, I believe, 2017, so it's been a few years, and I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars the second time around, whereas the first time, I believe I only gave it a 3 star. I really appreciated this book a whole lot more the second time around, and I was really hoping that I would like it a lot more, because originally my qualms with the book were that it felt like nothing was happening, but also like too many things were happening at once. And I do kind of describe this book as a slice of life sci-fi. So that kind of makes sense. There's no like huge plot. There's no huge storyline. However, that's kind of the point. It follows a decently large cast of characters. They're all crew members. They're all crew on this spaceship basically called the Wayfarer, and they are just all delightful. I think that was my absolute favorite part of the book, was just the characters, and I remembered really liking them, except for like 2, which I always called the main characters, but honestly like kind of all of them are main characters, so I don't know why I put such an emphasis on them beforehand. But they're delightful, and their dynamics with each other are just wonderful, and I just really enjoyed my time reading this book. The main point is just the journey that these characters take together and the relationships between them. And if you're okay with just character driven stories and you want to get into sci-fi, I think that this is a really great entryway. I know I said I didn't appreciate it the first time around, and it's not like I've read a ton of sci-fi in between then and now. In fact, I don't think that I've really read hardly any, so it's not that you have to have a background knowledge of sci-fi in order to enjoy this book. It was just a really solid read, and I'm really glad that I reread it, because not only has it just sparked this interest and passion for sci-fi now, and I just want to get my hands on everything sci-fi, it also just really made me appreciate plotless stories, I guess. I don't know, but I really want to continue on with the series, and I'm actually listening to the audiobook of the second one right now, so that should hopefully be in my next wrap up. After that, I have another 4-star read, and that is A Reaper at the Gates by Saba Tahir. This is the third book in the Ember and the Ashes series, and I did listen to this all on audiobook, and the audiobooks are absolutely amazing. I would definitely recommend them if you are wanting to pick this series up or just on a reread. They're just so good. I feel like they really bring the characters to life. Obviously, I can't really go into what this book specifically is about, but the main series is this Roman-inspired fantasy where the marshals are in charge and the scholars are basically treated like dirt. And I know I've talked about this series a lot because I've been kind of binging it this year, so I feel like almost all of my videos so far have had at least one of the books in them. But it's a really solid YA series. I don't really read a ton of YA anymore. You are so loud. My cat is so loud. But it's just such a good series. It's the most brutal YA series, or just YA book, that I think that I've read. Saba really destroys her characters, if that's the way to put it. They go through some shit, honestly. So I'm not used to seeing that in YA, and I think last time I described it as refreshing, which I know is not the right word to use, but it definitely makes it feel more high stakes, and the plot armor is still there, of course, but it's not as heavy, I guess, as a lot of YA books, and I just really do recommend the series. It's so good, and it's so solid, and even though they've all been 4 stars for me, like, that's still a really good rating. Like, it's a really good series. The next book that I'm going to talk about, I'm actually so excited for, and that is because it is one of my new favorite books, probably of all time. It was beautiful. Let me just show you what it is. It's Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. I knew that I would love this book. Like, I didn't have any doubts about it going into it. So the fact that it just like blew every expectation out of the water for me really says something. Both the story and the writing were just absolutely phenomenal and beautiful. The way that the author creates a sentence is just gorgeous. They just have a way with writing, and this book, I don't know whether to describe it as a love song or a poem or both, but it's just a work of art. It's a masterpiece. We follow Grace, who is a almost 29-year-old, and she just got her PhD in astronomy after 11 years of school nonstop, and now she kind of doesn't know what to do with her life. And so her and her best friends go to Vegas to kind of get away, and she ends up drunkenly marrying some random girl that she has never met, and the story kind of unfolds from there. It's about finding yourself and figuring out who you are as an adult, as a new adult, basically. And I just thought that was so beautiful, especially because, like, she's in her 20s and I'm in my 20s and I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my life. So it was just really refreshing to read that. And I just, even though I couldn't like exactly relate to her, I still felt like I was experiencing things along with Grace, and just seeing the friendship between her and her roommates, it was just beautiful. I love found families. That's probably my favorite trope, and the friendship that they have is just absolutely phenomenal. And then the relationship forming between Grace and, I believe her name is Yuki. I should remember this. I say it's my favorite book, and yet I'm like, yeah, it's Yuki, is her wife that she married in Las Vegas. And just seeing their relationship blossom is, how many times can I say beautiful when I'm describing this book? Because that is literally what it is. I cannot recommend this book enough. It was gorgeous, it was sapphic, it was just everything that I wanted, and I literally cannot recommend this enough. I don't know if I said it, I don't know if I need to. Obviously this was 5 stars. And on that great note, I'm ending it on another wonderful note, and that is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I give this 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not going to say that like, oh, that was inevitable, because I really didn't know what I was going to rate this book going into it. I love Sarah J. Maas. I am such a huge stan for her. I understand the critiques that a lot of people give her works, and I do think that they are justified. However, I still love her, and I still think that there's something so beautiful about every book that she writes. And this was absolutely no exception. I did not like Nesta in the original trilogy, who this book is following. She is the sister to the main character of the first trilogy, which is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, if you weren't aware. I feel like everybody has at least heard of the series by now, so... but I did not like Nesta in those books at all. I knew that there was like a reasoning behind why she was so stone cold, but I still didn't like her. I thought she was an interesting character, but I didn't like her. And I don't really think that we were supposed to, but in this book, it kind of shows why she's so unlikable, and it really just is a deep dive into her recovery process from all of the trauma that she's been through and how she's dealing with that and dealing with grief. And this book is so much more than just fairy smut, which I know a lot of people are just reducing the entire series to. And yeah, there's a lot of that in here, but like it's done in such a tasteful and realistic and empowering way. I know I'm talking about smut here, but like honestly, obviously there were like a couple parts that were a little over the top, but like every time it was just realistic, and it just felt like very empowering because it like, I don't know, Nesta is not afraid to like get what she wants in literally every sense of the word. I do think that like maybe we could have done with a little less, like we didn't really need a description of what was going on every single time. That's just my personal opinion and my like personal reading taste. I do think that we could have done with a little bit less of the smut, but still it was not, oh my goodness. It was not the central focus of the book. The central focus was Nesta and Cassian and their relationship, and also just their individual growth as well as their growth together as characters and in their relationship together. And I love Nesta so much now. Like the friendships that she makes, and I think that was kind of the whole like point, was that she didn't want to be a part of Feyre's found family. She wanted to carve something out for herself, and without going into spoilers, she did that. And just like the friendships that she made with some of the other characters was just so beautiful, and they just kind of like pack bonded over trauma, not even shared trauma because they all went through different things, but just like it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And I love that her healing process was not linear, because healing is messy. It's not pretty, and it's not just like this upward path, like you stumble and you relapse, and this book just really showed that. And I think that it was gorgeous, and I think that every topic was just handled so well, and it was so beautifully done, and I could tell that Sarah just really wrote her heart out with this one. And I just love this book so much, and I just think it's so important. I don't really know where the rest of the series is going to go, because I think that this is going to be like a secondary trilogy, but I honestly think that this one wrapped up like really nicely, so I'm very intrigued to see where the rest of the series goes. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm very excited for it. Also, without getting into like any spoilers, it was one sentence where one of Nesta's new friends, Amiri, like commented on how beautiful Moore was and then like blushed. That's the whole sentence, and yet I am so invested in that relationship and I ship it so hard. And if they're not endgame, then what was the point? What was the point? Hello, real quick. This is not editing Lark because I'm not editing. I just was driving and I am responsible, so I waited till I was stopped. Anyway, I did realize while I was driving to the library that I forgot to mention the DNF that I had this month, and that is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, I believe. I don't have it with me, obviously, because I'm in the car. There was nothing wrong with this book. I just was not in the mood for it. I wasn't feeling it. I don't know if it's necessarily for me, but since I own it, I might try it again in the future. I don't know. But yeah, that was the one DNF that I had this month. And again, it wasn't bad. I just, I wasn't feeling it. I don't know. Yeah, okay, let's continue. All right, those were the 5 books that I read in February, and like I said, it was an amazing reading month for me. Even though I only read 5 books, they were pretty hefty. Like that last book was almost 800 pages. So I'm very impressed with myself. I am very happy with everything that I read. It was amazing. Lavender is very happy too. Got your bow tie and you're all fancy. Okay, well, you're also tired of me. That's fine. Thank you for sticking with me this far. If you did, leave a flower emoji for the Poppy War, and I will see you in another video. Bye, guys.